Well, good evening and good afternoon and good morning from all parts of the world to the Maja House, the literary platform of Amritsar, of India, and of course, the world at large. It's indeed an honor to welcome three beautiful souls on this panel, on this session of the conversation which we are going to discuss today under the banner of Sanja Punjab, which we started in the month of May. And since May, we are doing programs for the promotion of literature, art, and culture, and strengthening the bond between the two nations, India and Pakistan. Of course, the basic essence is the Punjab. We have tried to touch almost all the avenues and the aspects like the culture, the heritage, the food, the history, the architecture. And out of all, something has come up very nice. It's a fiction on cricket, and we are happy that we have three legendary souls today with us. One is Mr. Sunil Gupta, the, the author of the book The Final Innings. Then we have Poonam, Tehmina Aziz Ayub. She is a prolific writer. I'll introduce a little later. And then we have Isabel. Isabel, I would request you to please unmute yourself and keep yourself unmuted because every
Okay.
time you would mute yourself, I would be, the only person who would be allowing you, right? So I would request all the three participants to please unmute, to remain unmuted, and requesting all other people to please mute yourself so that we don't get any kind of disturbance during our session. So, as I was sharing, that Preeti Gill is the founder of the Maja House, and it's been almost we have entered into the fourth year. We have done many festivals. We just concluded with the Sial Festival. That's a winter festival, and it was a fantabulous festival. The full month of so many activities. We have been able to invite the different authors, the writers, the journalists, the academicians, the artists, the literary people, so the list is unending. And today we have Sunil Gupta. Sunil Gupta, he represented two global advisory, he still represents two global advisory firms in South Asia. One is the Results International Group, LLP, and Apparels Worldwide Limited. He is a consultant and a trainer in the brand communication and has visited Pakistan, our neighboring country, I think probably the same number of times as I have visited, about 33 times as I had gathered some information. Sunil is a very versatile personality. He's into writing, he's into acting, he's into anchoring, he's into designing, he's into advertising, and he's a commentator. His first book, the book of experience in the Indian advertising industry, got published in 2009. Another anthology by eminent authors, The Phoenix Rises, Lockdown Chronicles in 2020. And third book, the book which we are going to discuss today, The Final Innings, a love and Valentine relationship between India and Pakistan. At this moment, I wish a happy Valentine's Day to everybody. This book, third book, that's a final innings done by Sunil. That's a psychological drama and got published in the November 2020. And let me take an honor in sharing that he's an accomplished actor. He's performed in about 50 plays. He's directed many plays, and a couple of plays he's directed. Like I have also acted in those plays, and he has also directed those plays. And he's played in India, Moscow, St. Petersburg, Lahore, Rafi Peer Theatre Festival, and many more places around the world. Then he has acted in a couple of movies also. Like as you can see, he can replicate Amitabh Bachchan. So Talwar, he was there, Mom by Sri Devi, he was there, and Vijaynagar, he was there. And recently, on the Prime Video, The Family Man and the Breathe Into. Well, Sunil is an established cricket commentator on All India Radio, a panelist for the BBC podcast Stumped, and of course, done commentary for the Star Sports Kabaddi League. So, ladies and gentlemen, an honor for me to have Sunil with us on today's session.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. We have a very smart, very pleasing personality from a very snowing town from London, and that's Isabel Westbury. I take an opportunity to welcome Isabel. Isabel is a sports writer, broadcaster, and a lawyer based in London. That's what we share together because she's also into practicing as a lawyer, and I'm also into and former Middlesex captain and cricketer. She was the president of the Oxford Union. Now, when you will listen to her, you will come to know the other aspects of her life. And ladies and gentlemen, to have another feather in the cap is our dearest, most smiling, ever smiling personality. It's a Poonam Ayub. She's a prolific writer, has schooled in Karachi and Rome, and has a postgraduate degree in the sociology anthropology from the University of Sussex, United Kingdom. She has worked in the field of gender development, population, and human rights. Her interests are varied and include reading, music, yoga. I know it that she is a yoga teacher, master, and traveling and trekking. She has penned the biography of Begum Rana Liaquat Ali Khan, and there's one presently in the pipeline on the lifeline of Sir Gangara. So, this session, I welcome you all. And, before you go for the conversation, now let me ask Sunil, what prompted you, as I can make out from your complete life, you're very versatile. You are into acting, you are into commentary, and you're into advertising, you're into what prompted you to write a fiction on cricket, and how did it happen, and what made you to write
Yeah,
this final innings? So share something about you, the final innings.
I certainly will. Thank you very much, Arvinder. And when you asked me which date to have this, and you gave me a couple of alternatives, I immediately selected Valentine's Day for the reason that quite obviously we want to be Valentines with neighboring countries. And it's so nice that you have two lovely ladies who are going to
Ah.
be talking to me rather than men. So I think that it's most appropriate.
Mhm.
where do where do books start? I've been debating this myself actually for quite some time. You can't say this book started here and it ended here. And this book is very much live in my mind today because all the things that I've covered in it are still very live. It's like a live test match, which goes on and on and on. And that's where the name comes from, though I'll come to the name later. And I think any person, whether a man or a woman, whoever, either leads many lives or has many strands to his or her life. I mean, the person is a professional, he's a family man, he has his interests, he has his fears, he has his concerns, he has his desires. There's so many things that go to make a person. And similarly, myself, as you so very nicely said, I mean, I try and do different things because I think you have one lifetime and you need to do multiple things if you really want to enjoy life and understand how life can be enriched, not just yours, but people that you interact with. So this book started some time ago because one of the things I think that all of us see today is what's taking place in the world. And I'm just not just talking about the subcontinent. I'm talking about everywhere in the world. Whether you talk about strife in the field of religion, or strife in the field of gender, or strife in the field of geography, um, or climate change. And to my mind, that is one very, very huge area that we are not paying enough attention to. So there are so many areas which are now interacting with each other. And of course, conflict is inherent in humanity. And everybody talks about it. I didn't want to be in a position where I'm writing, reams of stuff which are preachy or where people, talk down to each other and say, I know everything, because nobody knows anything. Quite honestly, I must tell you this. They think they do, but they have impressions or they have viewpoints. So I wanted to make it palatable for people, the things that I wanted to say in the book. And that's why fiction, and that's why cricket, because obviously the major theater, as it were, for this particular book is the subcontinent. And what is the one thing in the subcontinent, besides films, that actually unites people, or at least people resonate with? And that is cricket. I think we all understand that. Now, being a cricket commentator, having played the game, certainly having commentated on it for many, many, many years, I think I can say that I understand it a bit. I certainly understand what is going on in the subcontinent. I think we all do. And so that's actually where it started. And I said, why is this taking place? What would happen if certain things happened? How would that affect human relationships? How would that affect geographical relationships? Why are the relationships in the strained way that they are? And most importantly, at this point of time, what is it that we can do to highlight certain things that everybody should be concerned about? And as I said, you can see it in the newspapers, you can see it in the articles, everybody's talking down to him. So everybody's an expert on everything. And it sort of just becomes as there's a famous author called Lawrence Sanders, and he talks about a book in the future called The Tomorrow File. He says, everything is caca, it just brushes over your head. So how to get into people's minds without writing something that people will not internalize, will not be interested in. And quite obviously, cricket is, as I said, the one language you might say of the subcontinent, irrespective of what language we might speak. And when you start talking about cricket, then quite obviously you say it is, the neighboring countries that play cricket and the neighboring countries that are not playing cricket. And you wonder why that is happening as well. So cricket became not just a language, but a metaphor for so many things, because cricket, as you know, as I've said often, you play on the pitch that you're given. You play with the 11 people that you are there in the team, and you play to the best of your abilities. And you win the toss, you lose the toss, you've still got to play. And that is what life is all about. So cricket is actually a metaphor for the lives that we're actually facing. So you put all these strands together, you put concerns, you put what I've grown up with, where my mother's family came from. As you said, I've visited in business many times. I have many friends there, and some of them I can actually see on the screen. I'm so happy to see them there. It is a place, both Pakistan and India. As we say, we're joined at the hip. You can select your friends, but you can't select your neighbors, and that's exactly what the situation is. So I said, as somebody who's concerned, and let's come to concerns. There are so many concerns that we have, or should have actually, as human beings. How can I put this out in a way that will make people think? And that is really where it started. Because how can you make people think about certain things that have never happened? And you wonder why, especially between the two neighboring countries, where they've happened with other countries, again, in the subcontinent. And that's actually where the germ started. And that was a germ that started a few years ago. And then a story evolves. You can say, this is sort of where the genesis was, but then after that, the story evolves. And the story evolved with me. It took me 2 years to write it. And it evolved with me over a period of time because of the fact that things kept changing in the environment. There's that whole thing about the more things change, the more they are the same. And that is a bit of what we're facing in the world. But yet, I do believe that people are thinking people, or should be. And I just thought that this would be my contribution to try to make people think about the lives we lead, especially on the subcontinent, and how we can make a difference, how an individual can make a difference. And I think that's really the point of this book. Now, obviously, the title, as you said, title is Final Innings, and that also evolved over time, because it actually started off, I must tell you, as second innings. And I said, no, second innings is sort of still in the middle of the game. It's final innings, that is the final innings of a test match. And let me tell you something. We're all playing a test match on this planet. We're playing a test match on this planet, and this test match is not going to end in a draw. It's going to be win or lose for somebody, whether it is climate change, whether it is all the strifes that I've been talking about. And unless we take some sort of action as individuals, as societies, as countries, this is going to go down the tube. I'm not talking about save the planet, because that, as George Carlin, the famous comedian said, is actually a misnomer. The planet will survive. The planet is not going to spin off into space. The planet is going to be exactly here. What we're actually saying is save us, people. And the only people who can save people or save humanity is humanity itself. So that's where it is. And I said, again, fiction, sports fiction, and I'm sure Isabel will talk a little bit more about that as we go along. There is very little sports fiction, very little sports cricket fiction. And I thought, here's a good opportunity to remedy that. And then again, the characters, I didn't want to make them, the normal characters that you'd have, somebody who wins a game, they're characters like you and I. We fail at many things. We are not good at many things. We make a mess of many things, but we're here. And that's what human beings are. And therefore, I wanted to make every character and the story a human story. And as Poonam has told me many times, why did it end like that? And why did it end like that? It ended like that because there is no ending. I'm not telling you about the ending. Well, nor will she, nor will Isabel, I'm sure, I hope. But so that's it. As I said, there's no one place I can say this is where it started and this is where it's ended. In fact, I do believe that if you read this book even 2 years down the line or 3 years down the line, there will be things that will resonate or should resonate with all right-thinking people everywhere, not just on both sides of the border, but everywhere. So that's Final Innings for you, a metaphor for what we are playing in our lives, all of us, men, women, children of different denominations in different parts of the world, but we are playing. And we've got to put our best foot forward if we are to succeed.
That's really nice. So over to Poonam ji.
Well, it's interesting. I didn't think of it as Sunil just described, cricket fiction. So that is right. It is actually cricket fiction, and so therefore one can play around with a lot of things, and yet it's a pretty serious book. So it's not.
It is a very serious book, yes, but as I said, it's not an academic book. It is fiction. It's a story. Right. But yes, it's a serious story.
I just want to actually bring Isabel in at this point and ask her if she feels that Sunil really went in for the overkill by putting so much onus on cricket as a major healer in this fractured ties of ours.
Oh goodness! Wow, I don't know if I want to sit here and critique the book to any degree, but I think it's one of those relationships where you could argue that sport or cricket is a metaphor for life, but equally that life reflects cricket as well. And I think on that theme, my question with this book, with the obviously very strong sort of thread of cricket, its impact on the relationships in the book, and those relationships are between individuals, between nations. What effect practically do you think that sport can have on cross-border relationships, on diplomacy? Is it actually does it have an effect, or do we use it more as a sort of a shadow vehicle, an empty vehicle?
Oh, I am 100% certain, Isabel, that it has an effect, and it has a good effect. I can tell you, in my lifetime, I have seen scenes that I never thought I would see. 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, I've been seeing them myself. I've been there either at the ground or seen them on television. I remember a time when the Pakistan team was here in 2007. There was a test match going on in Delhi, and in fact, I was on commentary at that time. And I still remember the type of reception that the Pakistani cricketers got here at the ground, where some of the Indian stars were, who came onto the balcony, they were not really paying attention to them, the fans in the ground. And Shoaib Akhtar was fielding at fine leg, and everybody was congregating around Shoaib Akhtar. And it was a fantastic scene. I still remember the time when Pakistan beat India in Chennai many, many years ago. And it was Wasim Akram's side, and he led the Pakistan team on a lap of honor, and the entire stadium stood up and applauded. Yes, it can happen. I've seen it in front of my eyes, and I've seen in 2004, last example, when India went to Pakistan for the last time, where I saw fans in the Karachi Stadium, the National Stadium in Karachi, with both the flags on their cheeks. Now you think about this, the Indian flag and the Pakistan flag flying together. I've seen it in England, I've seen it at the Oval, I've seen it at Lord's, I've seen it in so many places in Australia. I've sat with Pakistani fans in Manchester in '99 when India was playing Pakistan at the World Cup. And it was a fantastic experience. So outside, it's a different thing. In countries, when this happens, it's a different thing. So okay. I hope that answers your question.
Well, so on that answer, and I feel as though your book is almost a challenge in itself to prove that cricket can have this effect. If that's the case, then why I can't remember the last time that India played Pakistan, the men, the women, in a bilateral series. The only time we see these two nations contest against each other during World Cups, where it's inevitable. So if cricket or sport is so powerful, why do we not use it?
I think you've answered your own question. Because it is so powerful. Without straying into territories that perhaps we might not want to, it's exactly the fact. It's like you hold something back from somebody because you want to either teach him a lesson or whatever it might be, because it is so powerful, and that is why the situation obtains. Now, I'm not saying we're not talking about why, we're not talking about faults, but you said powerful. Yes, it is, and we must understand that. And therefore, again, come back. Why this book? I want people to think about it. I'll come to other reasons why this whole thing about people, and I keep stressing it. But you're right, Isabel. That's absolutely right. Because it is so powerful, I thought it would be a telling metaphor for the situation that we have, or that is there in our part of the world.
Okay.
Poonam, if I may, I might add one extra question that I find sort of intriguing, because Poonam, of course, is an author of non-fiction books and intriguing in themselves, very notable people that you've written about. But this one, Sunil, I think I've talked to you about this before, that it's a piece of fiction. Where cricket, as we say, metaphor for life, etc. But there's actually a real dearth of fiction in cricket writing. I mean, I think about some of my favorite novels will have been Shehan Karunatilaka's Chinaman, Joseph O'Neill's Neverland, that use cricket in a fiction sense. And now, of course, we've got Final Innings as well. What do you think the power of having fiction then, as opposed to non-fiction, is it more powerful in spreading a message, or less so? And why did you choose to write fiction as opposed to non-fiction in sending that message?
You see, non-fiction is defined. The boundaries are defined. It happened or it didn't happen. I mean, that's just about as far as you can get, right? Whereas in fiction, you can open up your mind. This is imagination at work. And you use all those strands to weave a story, which in fact, as I've called, which is a voyage deep into uncharted territory. And that is what I wanted this to be, because thinking, as human beings, forget about cricket, forget about anything else, just thinking. Every time you think, every time you read something, you learn something, and that is uncharted territory in your mind. And that is what I wanted. So as you said, why is there this dearth of fiction, especially in cricket? And I wonder, because cricket has the ability to have so many stories woven around it. I've said in the book, I mean, every time you walk onto the field, it's a new story. You don't know what's going to happen in the next 2 hours, the next 3 hours, depending. You don't know what's going to happen in the next over, the next delivery. So look at the amount of stories that you can weave, and then the interpersonal relationships between countries, relationships between teams. We see, if you look at, for instance, the T20 leagues. Now, in the T20 leagues, there are no nationalities. They're just people playing together, and they may be playing against each other, in a national sense, England and Australia, hypothetically, right? And here in the IPL, for instance, they're playing together on the same team. Is there any animosity? No. So
Okay.
I think sport gets people together. I certainly believe that.
And yet we haven't got any Pakistan players in the IPL. I'm sure that's a question for another day, but that feels as though that's a vehicle to use sport as a relationship healer.
Well, I think that's microcosmically what is there. It's a reality. People more important than I have taken these decisions, and perhaps for good reason. Who knows? That's not anything that I would like to comment on. I haven't commented on. That's nothing I get into. We're merely talking about people playing cricket together, and can individuals make a difference? And that's really where we are at. Yeah.
So can I come back in?
Yeah, I'll relinquish the floor to you, Poonam.
Please, by all means. I think you both are better at this whole sort of game of cricket. But I actually wanted to ask Sunil a very simple question. the years that you're talking about were not clearly enunciated in the book. You know, one doesn't know which time span you're talking about, because after all, it's very important, I think, the backdrop, the political backdrop of situations. And as somebody just mentioned, Ziaul Haq and Rajiv Gandhi in the stadium together. Those kinds of things only happen when there are leaders that are also open to the situation. I think all fans are happy and easy, and they all, have admiration for the other side's heroes. But it's the leaders that make all the difference. So in your book, which are the years that you're dealing with? Because obviously,
Actually, there is a time frame. I mean, it starts in January 2016, which is where the story starts, and then sort of goes on to about 2021, 2022. It's there. It's mentioned, but in passing. Frankly, that's not important. It could be 2030, to 2040. It
I
doesn't
think the
really
leaders
matter.
that are in power at that time is important.
No, leadership is always important. That's why I said the time is not important.
Yes,
The
I
time frame is.
meant in terms of the political backdrop.
No, I think let's come to the point that you made, and the point is leadership. Of course, it's all about leadership. Let's talk about a cricket team. A cricket team, more than any other sports team, I think Isabel will bear me out, is where leadership plays the most important role on a minute-by-minute basis. It doesn't happen in soccer, it doesn't happen in basketball, it doesn't happen anywhere that actually you can actually think of. And similarly, again, a metaphor, it's a question of leadership. Let me talk to you about leadership. This is something that has always fascinated me, and I've talked about it in different forums and all that. Who is a leader? What is a leader? First of all, I think the best leaders are the least insecure leaders. I think that is where leadership actually starts, right? A leader should be somebody who is prepared to relinquish his position for somebody else. Unfortunately, what is actually prevalent in our world across the globe, let's see what's happening in America today. I mean, forget us. We're nobody compared to the might of America. Look what's happening in America. Insecurity. And where does insecurity stem from? The lust for power. So I'm saying all those things, leaders are not because you've been put in a position. We've had leaders and leaders and leaders because they were top of the pyramid, right? And we can name leaders that were good leaders or bad leaders. I mean, let's talk about, for instance, somebody like Gorbachev in the USSR. Now you can turn around and say it was because his hand was pushed and he had to do it because the USSR was not in a happy situation, therefore glasnost and all that happened, but it happened, right? As in 1992, when our economy opened up, when P.V. Narasimha Rao was the prime minister, it opened up and India has not looked back since. I mean, it could have gone much further, frankly, if you ask me, but we've not looked back since. But every time you try and close things, it's because of insecurity. And that, to my mind, is the most threatening aspect of life on the planet today. It's always been there, but because today information is so easy, it is there at the fingertips, whether it's fake news or real news or whatever news, it's there. When we were growing up, it took till the 9 o'clock news to get some information about what was taking place. Today, it's the next second that you're getting some updates and some alerts and so on and so forth. Because of this information overload, I think people see leadership in different ways. Leaders see themselves in different ways. They see the type of impact they have, whether it is on their teams, whether it is on their people, whether it is in their organizations. So I think, yes, leadership is absolutely the key. Now, as I said, I've told you what defines a leader. To my mind, non-insecurity defines a great leader.
But yes, but in the context of your book, it was not so much that as somebody's very proactive like Imran Khan, and you mentioned him by name as the Prime Minister of Pakistan.
No, sorry, no, I did not mention
Mr.
him.
Khan.
Mr. Khan, can we say that? 20,000 million Khans, I'm
cricketer
sure.
who is also
Why? Well, no, I mentioned Imran Khan as a part of cricket
Yes.
non-fiction, as a part of the World Cup winning 1992 World Cup winning team. After that, I did not take his name.
But
So no, don't, no. Punam, I must insist that we rectify this. No, his name was never taken, never. Prime Minister was Mr. Khan. That was it. That's all he said. His name was never taken, and is not taken.
We haven't got very many Mr. Khan's except Ayub Khan, who was there in 1958. So,
No, but it's a book of fiction. You never know. There might be another one.
yeah,
Who
but
knows?
the point I'm trying to make right now is
No.
one very
No.
visible leader and one almost invisible leader at your end.
No, I don't know about our end, and that I don't even go into that, quite honestly. It's a completely different thing. It's about,
Because they're talking
let's
about,
come back to the book. The book is a story about a cricketer, right? It's an Indian
yes,
cricketer, right?
yes.
He is an Indian cricketer who tries to do something different, right? Tries his own way to mend fences, tries his own way to make friends, and
He's also a
to
very
build.
romantic man.
Am I or him?
Too romantic.
Yeah, what's life without a little romance? I mean, you've got to have romance. I mean, today's Valentine's Day. You're not going to have romance today. When are you ever going to have romance?
In fact, I was nervous when I was meant to talk about this book on Zoom with you people. And I said, a cricket book, what am I going to say? And then when I started looking at the book, I said, wow, it's also got this, teeny bopper romance that Mr. Ramdas is indulging in, boom, boody, boom. And
No, again, I must correct you. There's not teeny bopper, and it's not boom, pity, boom, ti boom. I must say right now to everybody who's listening, there's no sex, there's no
yes,
violence
I know, but
in this book. No, hang on. No. So I suggest whoever's listening in, read it and make up your own minds, but it's anything but teeny bopper. I think Isabel will bear me out on that.
it's much more teeny bopper because there's no sex.
Oh, well, maybe that's your view sitting in Lahore or wherever you're sitting. In our part of the world, no. Teeny bopper is, boy, you're bopping the teenies.
I mean, heart beating, looking at her from a distance, that kind of thing. I mean, both.
Why not? I've done it many times in my life. I'm sure you have. I'm sure people who are listening in and watching have done it many times in their lives. It's a damn good feeling. So why not?
But it's all. In fact, I in fact thought that you were almost avoiding the real aspects of the relationship and making them quite.
Again, I come back. I want people to use this book to think. And that is why there are no prescriptions in this book. That is why there are no homilies in this book. There are no, hard endings in a way that, he succeeded in this and India won the test match and India won the series because he came back and played. Nothing of the sort, because it doesn't happen in life. It's so easy. So many people have written and said, but we actually expected it to go this way, but it went that way. I said, that is music to an author's ears because it's not predictable.
Obviously, he was a great coach. Besides being a great cricketer, he had those.
Well, he became one.
He had those qualities, and
yes, absolutely. Though he was never captain, right? And we all know what happens in the book.
Be, right?
But
is that right? He chose not to be.
That's his call. He didn't want to be because he didn't think that he had the ability or the time, or he was, not in the physical state, injured or whatever. So, and that is another sign of greatness, that even if it's offered to you, you don't take it because you don't believe you can do justice to it. So yes, I mean, he is a Renaissance man, the protagonist in the book, Ramdas Supreti. And another thing I wanted to tell you about why Ramdas Supreti, and some of you may understand, who are from India. It is a name from the north of India, from Uttarakhand actually, where just now we've had this glacier meltdown and this terrible calamity that has taken place. And in a way, I must say, my book covers that sort of thing.
Yes.
The ecological harm that is taking place in the mountains, not just in India, but everywhere else. And this is climate change is a part of this because, again, he comes from there, and that is why I made him come from there, because I've seen it in my own life. You come back to, where this book started. As I said, a lot of it is what I've observed. I've grown up, I've spent a lot of my time in those hilly areas when I was young. And I've seen how those things, how they've been completely and totally obliterated, how they've been degraded. And that is all because of human wants and human desires. And it has to end.
And human indifference.
And human?
Indifference.
Oh, complete indifference. Because the whole thing is me.
I have a question on that, Sunil. You talk about human indifference. Is cricket indifferent to climate change? I think about, flying around tournaments. I think about the the stadium lights that are pouring through, the electricity that's needed to host games all over the world, etc. I mean,
Right.
yeah, how where does cricket come into this and in
Oh,
the role of
I
combating
completely
climate
agree with
change?
you. I mean, the day-night games. Now you can say there's commercial reason for that because you want spectators to come in, but yes, you're absolutely right. And look at the amount of electricity that is going to be used, and where does it come from? I mean, it's going to be coming from either hydel plants, or it's going
Not
to be
solar.
coming from coal plants, and at the end of the day, cricket actually guzzles a lot, but it's a cross sport. If you look at America, I mean, all the sport is taking place either indoor or under lights. Hardly anything is taking place in the daytime. Well, we all grew up playing sport outside. We didn't play under lights any point of time, right? So you're right, absolutely. In cricket, because it lasts longer, but I mean, it takes place in soccer. Look at the EPL. I mean, it's all taking place on the lights everywhere. So I think sport itself needs to regenerate itself. There are certain stadiums, the one in Bangalore, where actually they're putting, and they have put solar panels on the pavilions and so on and so forth, where the spectators sit, the stands, and that solar lighting actually is used part of that is used for lighting the stadium and stuff.
I think they
People
should
have
make it mandatory.
absolutely. In fact, once on Stumped, I don't think you were there, Isabel, but somebody else, and I talked about it, and Jim Maxwell picked it up about why can't the cricket stadiums actually start generating their own power? And I believe it's happening in Lords as well. I think Lords is taking some steps about that. And why just electricity? Look at the other thing, all the other elements that go around it. Look at the plastic bottles of water that people are picking and chucking around. The plastic in which they're shoving sandwiches, and then where does that plastic go? So, it's electricity. It is, the environment getting spoiled. It is plastic waste. Perhaps that plastic
And flights
is perhaps,
for
and
teams
flights,
to
of
travel
course.
as
Yeah, there
well.
you are. Absolutely. So it is. Now, my point is, there are certain things that you can militate against. There's certain things that you can't. I mean, there will be certain things that you can control to a certain extent. You can't do away with sport. I mean, you've got to be able to make it better, right? For instance, and I've said this before, there have been tennis players. When tennis players get their rackets strung during tournaments, they have this plastic sheath, and then they chuck it and it goes in the bin, and who knows what happens to that. And a couple of tennis players, I think it was Roger Federer once, who started doing it with recycled paper, getting his racket back with recycled paper. Now, these are small things. And I keep saying, especially in our part of the world, cricketers are icons. There was a time, just one time, when the Indian cricketers wore their mother's name instead of their own at the back of their jerseys, to raise this whole thing about gender awareness. And you have this whole thing about breast cancer now, and the Pink Day, and Andrew Strauss and Glenn McGrath. But I'm saying those are, specks in the water. I mean, literally drops in the ocean.
So is this an argument then that, if we want to try and decrease the impact of sport or cricket on climate change, that we want to see more cricket, more sport being played between nations who are close together? I mean, I didn't realize actually quite how close, for example, Amritsar is to the border of Pakistan. I mean, surely this is as strong an argument as ever that we should be seeing more matches between India, Pakistan, Nepal, even Sri Lanka as well, than jetting across Bangladesh as well.
Absolutely, I could not agree with you. No, of course. I mean, there is the Asian Cricket Council, as you know. There's the ACC. There are so many tournaments that are supposed to take place and aren't taking place for whatever good reason or bad. So I'm not getting into the politics of the thing, but just purely as something that should be done. Of course, it should. I think everybody recognizes that. But you're right. I mean, there will always be some ecological damage when you have a lot of sport that is going on. You have to try and minimize it. And you can minimize it by doing lots of other things around it that minimize it. And I think that's what it's going to be, because sport today is a reality. A competitive sport is a reality. It's a money spinner. I mean, there are livelihoods that are dependent on this. But you can make it better. Like you can make farming better. The methods that you use, et cetera, the lack of pesticides, all that. Everything can be made better if you have the right attitude. I think that is what really this whole book is all about. Do you have the attitude to want to try and do something? Because then you're going to try it.
We have, of course, the example of the other person in this book, Khalid Azim, the umpire. the Pakistani Empire. So you
Yes.
gave Mr. Ramdas the title of a Don Quixote, and Mr. Khalid Azim was an equally brave man who stuck his neck out, for the
Yeah.
passion that he believed in.
And I think there are people everywhere in the world who will stick their necks out to do what is right.
It was
Right. And obviously we've seen it in movies. We've seen it in so many movies. I'm talking about Bollywood movies, right? Where we've had actors, we've had singers, we had stories that center around the relationship on the subcontinent. I think, yes, there are people. And Khalid Azam, right, who is the Pakistani Empire, is a very important part of this particular book and the relationship that he shares with Ramdas Supreti. Absolutely. To my mind, it's a metaphor of what a lot of us share as human beings. And as I said, I'm so happy to see some of my friends on the screen here.
Does anybody want to make an intervention among your friends? I can't.
No, they will later, I'm sure. I can see Inam waiting for his chance. Inam Rahman, who lives now in Karachi, but I met him in Lahore for the first time. And
now, Sunil, as you said, I'm sorry, I'm just popping in. As you said that there had been movies, the Bollywood movies. How do you see this book, as a bridge between the two nations? Bringing more love, more prosperity, more closeness, more warmth.
I thought you were going to say as a script for a movie.
well, script for a web series, perhaps, not a movie. I think it'll be too complicated for a movie. And by the way, that's some chats are happening about that, but let's not go into
that's
that.
right. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think the question that you raised. See, again, I want to come back. I want people, when they read this book, not only to enjoy it, because hopefully it's an enjoyable book, but to resonate with the characters and to understand them. That's one thing I've been so happy. The type of reviews that I've got from people who've written in, and friends who've written, and my friends are not the type, I can tell you, who will just send me sort of platitudes. They will actually get to the point and say this was great or this was not. And all of them talk about the characters having come to life, and that's what I want, because you don't want cardboard characters. You want characters who are flesh and blood, like you and I, making mistakes, doing the wrong thing, trying for grandeur when they shouldn't be trying for it, whatever it might be. And yet it is the power of the individual. And I keep coming back to that. If people from this book, and to answer your question, Arvinder, people from this book love, friendship, whatever, if it makes them think, if it just makes them think about where we are today as a people, as humanity, as a planet, I think I will have achieved more than I would have ever expected to achieve. Whether that results in love, friendship, peace, more cricket, less cricket, I don't know. But I want people to think. And that's why the medium of fiction, because in fiction you can build up characters, otherwise you're stuck to characters that already people know about. And I didn't want that to happen. There's no character like all the characters that I mentioned. There might be some people who closely resemble or have some characteristics about them. But that, again, a lot of books come from your own experience. People you've interacted with, people that you've seen, people that you admire or don't admire, as the case may be. So there are strands of those that come through, whether it's the two ladies in the book who are the main ladies in the book, or the two main men in the book. Yeah, you've interacted with people like that before, maybe in your college days, maybe wherever, and you pick up little bits of those, and their characteristics, and maybe you knew them personally, and a little bit of that comes into it, and that's what makes it a personal book. So it is a personal book in that sense.
But I think Arvinder's question was about the fact that, do you think it can be a bridge? And I made the point earlier that I think the prevailing atmosphere is very important for this bridge to work,
The best bridges are built over swirling waters, right? That's when you really, that's when you need a bridge, Otherwise you can just swim across. That's when you need a bridge, right? So yes, I certainly believe it can. I would very much like to believe it can, but you're right.
Ramdas went a long way on that bridge. He traveled a long way.
No,
he's almost.
Yes, he has. The protagonist has. Where it led him, where it will go, we don't know. As indeed we don't know where this bridge, this chat that we're having, and 40, 50 people who are listening to us, will be able to internalize what we want from this conversation or from this particular book. But as I said, this is not. I don't want this a book where to be a book where you read and say, okay, yeah, ho gaya, put it away and never think about it again. I want people to think about the story. But what happened? Do they see themselves in it? Do they see the circumstances they live in that? I think that's something that
But here I saw in one of the chats somebody saying that you can't mix cricket with climate change.
Plastic.
I said,
Why?
what?
Why?
I
Why
don't know.
can't you?
I have to see.
No, why? Why
I
cricket
put-
doesn't take place
Yeah,
on this
it-
planet?
open the
Of
chat.
course it does. It doesn't take place on Mars. It takes place in this world. Yeah, you have to grow grass. Grass
Mahesh
requires
Sagar.
certain things. I'm saying, I mean, that's a ridiculous argument.
And Mahesh Sagar, who says you can't mix up sport with climate also in terms of plastic.
Well, I'm sure. I mean, he has his view. Good luck to him. I'm not saying I'm right or wrong, so long as he's thinking about it. Maybe tomorrow when he goes to see a cricket match, when it all opens up, he won't carry plastic with him. He'll carry a reusable bag.
Yes, he's
Yeah,
carrying
I would have made one person change.
his
That's
own
about it.
bag,
Yeah, that's right.
which he
Yeah,
can bring
exactly.
back home.
There you are.
So should we start with the questions? Are we?
Yeah, please, of course, we can start. And since this last 15 minutes, and normally we would have the question answer session for the last 15 minutes. And
I would like to have just a couple of more points, if you don't mind, before I get to.
No.
Yeah, I've been thinking about, and I knew that, obviously the conversation is going to go around this way, and I made some notes over here. And I just wanted to say the whole thing about the power of the individual and the power of the collective. I'll give you three instances, right? The first instance is the Berlin Wall. East and West Berlin, East and West Germany were, perhaps the most implacable enemies that you could possibly have. It is people who helped to break down that wall. You look today, this year or last year, UAE and Israel, who have now got diplomatic ties. Would you have dreamt of this? Would you have dreamt of this a year ago? No. You think about Europe, where Europe was in the 1930s and 1940s when World War II was going on. France and Germany were at each other's throats. Today, there is a European Union. It can happen. And lastly, you think about the United States of America. 1965, Martin Luther King, he was championing civil rights in the US as an African American. Less than 50 years later, an African American was elected to the highest job in the land of president. It can happen. And it must happen. And it should happen. And we share collective responsibility to trying to make it happen. Moment you get into antagonisms, you're breaking it down. Let me tell you, terrorism is the most cowardly way to try and do something. And I want to say this up front to everybody who's listening. It has never solved any problems. It has created only more problems. And I think that's what they're beginning to realize in the Middle East. And they will eventually realize everywhere else. That we have to exist together, or as I think Thomas Jefferson says, we either will hang together or most assuredly, we will hang separately. And that is what is going to happen unless we get it all together. And as I said, cricket, the metaphor for this part of the world, I think it is, to my mind, apt. A lot of people may disagree with it. That's entirely up to them. See, nobody agrees with every book. Do you read every Booker Prize book? I don't. I mean, some of them are so, my God, people lead terrible lives. I know, thank you very much, I mean, what's the latest one that's of there, Shaggy Bain or whatever it is. Good heavens, I had to plow through parts of it. I really can't do it. So, but that's good. I mean, people liked it, fantastic. And that's the whole thing. Variety is life. I don't necessarily like what you eat or wear or dress or whatever. Neither should you like that about me. But if we can get each other to think, if we can get each other to converse rather than to shout at each other.
Well, yes, I mean, your last remarks, of course, denote a high level of optimism. And as you know, or you might know, that Maja House's very ethos is lodged in optimism.
And I'm so glad, and I must thank Arvinder again for this invitation, because I thought this is absolutely the right day. And of course, today being Valentine's Day, I thought was again very appropriate that we should have this conversation. But yes, it's amazing.
Cross-border interaction.
Well, love everywhere. I mean, love with Isabel sitting in England. Why just cross the border everywhere? All my friends sitting there, right? People sitting in America, people sitting in England, people sitting in India. Oh, absolutely.
Of course, you have your love stories everywhere. So
that's another book. That's not in this book. That's another book.
I just performed my love story on the stage right now before
Yeah. This was based on Neil Simon's play, Seduction from the
No,
Good
there's a
Wife.
Chekhov's play.
Well, Chekhov's play. Yes,
Yeah,
I mean, and Neil Simon had adapted it.
Also did it.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Fantastic. Okay.
Yeah, maybe the questions are, I think, were
Yeah.
7:20. Yeah.
So I would request the audience, if they have the questions, like we have few of the questions in the chat box, that I would request Poonamji to read it out, and then of
I
course we
think,
can answer. Of course,
there are some very long questions and I can't read them very clearly. If you can do it, Arvinder, please select and read
sure. And I'll do it,
and
and then
sift out.
yeah.
Some are
No, that doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. If
repetitive.
somebody has any question, please one can raise a hand. And like Enamur Rahman, yeah, I'm just going to unmute him. Please unmute yourself, and you can ask your question before.
Yeah, hi, Sunil. I hope I'm audible.
Yes.
Great, good to see you. And it's just my fat finger typing. I was saying that 17 years I've known you, and where's your Dorian Gray picture? Because you keep getting younger. So
They were talking about Dorian Gray before this.
but seriously, I mean, I haven't had the pleasure of yet reading the book. I'm sure I will shortly. But we keep. It's from a more skeptical point of view, isn't it all about the economy? I mean, if there's an economic argument around sport, and we saw that in South Africa, for example, their desire to get back from apartheid to mainstream was in a sense triggered from sport also, or their isolation from sport. But it was just the economy which was making these sort of pushing these decisions. Any views on that?
I wish it were true that economics would play a more important role in getting things going. But I think you also know that there are many times, we've seen it in world history, where people don't really care about the economics of the people, leaders, let's say, right? And for them, it's immaterial how the economy is, because you have a coterie, you have a cabal of the people at the top. We know all the people who live in, Black Sea villas and all those sorts of things. And it's happened across. I mean, the worst dictatorship was when the Communist Party was there in Russia. We all know, you and I know, right, the type of lifestyles that they led. So I think economics plays a role when people are mature. And I'd like to stay on that for a moment now, because the whole point about this, about thinking, you start thinking about things only when you're educated. And you're educated means that you want to think and you have an open mind, and you're able to internalize certain things and make conclusions for yourself, or think about other ways to be able to process that information. Unfortunately, many people are not given that opportunity. And economics is so critical, and it is critical, but unfortunately, once again, it's restricted at this stage to just a select few. We all know the type of poverty that is there across the world, across the globe. Why should it be there when we have the type of technology that we have, the type of technology really that we have across fields, whether it is agriculture, or whether it is communication, or whether it is whatever? It is because some people want more than what is due to them. Maybe that's their form of economics. And some people get less than what's due to them. And
I'm going to butt in and say that I agree with you. I'm a cynic as well, because if economics is only part of the thinking, I think the people that have the power to make those decisions certainly are thinking about the economics, and it doesn't necessarily also affect, whether India play Pakistan in the men's test, or whether we make cricket sort of more amenable or combating climate change. It also has a huge role in the gender of cricket as well. I mean, I think one of the driving forces that we're seeing of more women's games, of more increased focus and talk about a women's IPL, is because far too slowly, the powers that be are realizing that excluding 50% of a population from this sport is not a particularly great fiscal plan. So I think I would sort of agree that with Sunil that maybe economics is only one factor and only certain people think about it perhaps as impacting sport. But I would argue that the people with the power at the top are the ones that certainly are thinking about economics when they come to make decisions about cricket or sport.
Oh, there should be. Or there should be, Isabel. I think, or there should be. I mean, you raise gender. I think it's a reality in our part of the world. It's certainly gender is an issue which is not raised. I talked about the time when the cricketers wore their mother's name on the jersey. It was only for one day. These things don't go away in one day. These things you don't internalize in one day. But coming back to Inam's point, I mean, economics comes from so many different factors, Inam, and I certainly believe economics is one of the factors. We know what money spinners these games are. We've seen them abroad in the ICC tournaments. They are jam-packed. People are buying tickets left, right, and center from, let's say, sources that are not always kosher sources. Why? Why do people fly? There are people who flew in for the Champions Trophy final at the Oval in 2017 from America for one day to watch the India-Pakistan final. Now, I mean, either they're bananas, or there's some reason for that they're there, right? So I'm saying, of course, there's economics, but I think across the globe there are so many other factors that trump just normal economics. I didn't mean Trump in any pun whatsoever.
Right, we have another question from Pradapita. Before he or she's asked, there's a question from Omer Murad.
Yes.
A question to both of you, Sunil and Poonam both. It's clear that there's a disconnect between the leaders think and what the people think about the relationship over issue between the two countries. Now, if this is the case, then how, as individuals, can make a way to this broken relationships? As Sunil, you're very right. Gave you very right gave examples of Germany, Dubai, Israel. No, it was leadership. You thought. Now the question.
Poonam, would you like to take this? Then I'll come back in it because I've spoken.
Well, as I already stressed this several times already today, that I think it's all a question of the leadership and how willing they are and how open they are to better relations. And at times it has worked. There's been a sort of thaw has been there because of cricket, but there are other times when it just will not. It just won't. The freeze will not.
Unfreeze, as the case
Unfreeze,
would be.
yes.
Yeah, see, there are so many different factors that operate and obtain on the subcontinent, and we don't even go into this. I mean, it is not our ambit to talk about those because that's reality. The only thing that I've said, and I will say again, terrorism in any form, whether it's gender terrorism, normal terrorism, we talk about militant terrorism, we talk about religious terrorism, whichever. Terrorism is cowardice. And I think that is the critical thing that I wanted to get across. The moment we internalize that, right, then I think people will start thinking and people can come forward and make a difference. That's what I wanted to make. Now, it may never happen in our lifetimes.
I think terrorism is almost a given. It's not something that any of us can do anything about. It's just there.
Well, this is my point. I mean, it was given that, black and white people could not sit in the same bus in America. It was given. It was given for years, right? Till 1965, it was given. And then in 2008 or 2004, whenever Obama came, there was an African-American president. There's nothing given. There's nothing given in life, in the world, in the planet, nothing. If you want to make a change, you can make a change. That's the only point I want to make.
And now we have Pradapita. You can ask your question.
Hello, Mr. Gupta.
Hello.
This is Pradipto from Jakarta.
Hi, Pradipto. Good to hear you. Yeah.
I can tell you, Sunil, that 25 years later, I'm so proud of your consistency. You haven't changed your looks and you haven't improved your game of tennis at all in 25 years.
Well, I tried to volley some of them back. I think they went into the tram lines.
So here's my point, Sunil. I've been listening to everything that you've been saying. And I just want I have a point of view and how much of importance should be placed on that point. Mm-hmm. I think if somebody is a sportsman and plays any particular sport, there is inculcation of a certain behavior in that person from a very young age. Mm-hmm. Respect, appreciation, teamwork, will to win, all the things that go with it. Now, yet I find, yes, while education is also very important, countries such as ours do not give due importance to developing what I call a sporting mentality or a sporty mentality. To me, if that happens, then will it solve the world's problems? No. But will it have more people coming into this world, into growing years of their age, with a better level of understanding of what it takes to play their life in the real world is very important. So how much of importance do you think governments and people and institutions should lay to developing sports as a culture?
I think there is no end to what the governments should or could do to develop sports as a sporting culture, because as you so rightly said, what is sport? I mean, beyond the game, it's as you said, it teaches you teamwork. It teaches you relying on yourself sometimes when you're playing an individual game. It teaches you sportsman spirit. When somebody else wins, you pat the person on the back. It teaches you to appreciate others. It teaches you, most importantly, to keep improving. Even the best cricketers, the best tennis players, they don't stop. They don't stop because they won a major. They keep improving. They keep changing their game. For bowlers like Ashwin, right? He has from where he was as an off spinner to what he's developed into today, because he kept changing. Sachin Tendulkar, did he sit back because he scored 25 centuries? No. That's why people practice. That's why people get other aspects of the game, more strings to their bow. And that is a metaphor for life. If you believe, I reached, I'm CEO and I can't learn anything more, that's the end of you, actually. That's the end of your organization, quite honestly. But if you give an environment where people can learn, and most importantly, people can question. People can question the leader and ask him or her why this is happening in this organization. Can this not be done in that way? I think it enriches the entire organization, it enriches people, and certainly it makes it much more valuable in terms of the overall context and content of what you're developing. So yes, I could not agree with you more. I've always been a votary for sport ever since I was in school with my children, anybody. Sports is absolutely key, and not just because you play a game, because it teaches you so much about yourself, about society, about other people.
Right. Thank you so very much. And I think probably we are already over by the time. So I would request Preeti ji to come and conclude, give her conclusion. Preeti ji, am I audible?
Thank you, Avinder. Thank you very much, all of you, for a brilliant and engaging conversation. I have a confession to make, though. I don't understand cricket. I don't watch it, and I'm really sorry about that, because this book certainly sounds extremely interesting. But it also sounds interesting because of what you have actually put into the reading of the book. And for me, that is really interesting. I love the way that the discussion has veered from cricket into cross-border relations, into leadership and what makes a good leader, into talking about environment concerns, the economy, apartheid. I mean, that's fantastic. So if actually, I mean, I think even as a publisher or my hat as an editor, it actually brings you to how does one read a book and how much of yourself you're actually putting into the book. So when you say that cricket is a metaphor for life, for example, I can very well see where you're going with that. With what Poonam brought in with her comments about leaders and leadership, because that again is something that is so very important, not just to the game, to the way we live our lives, to the way the country lives its life, and what we are going to be heading into. And also what Isabel said about, if sport and the playing of sport is such a very vital and powerful way to build cross-border relations, as well as build these relationships between individuals and society. Why have we left it? Why do we not do this? And I don't think I understand the fact that just because it's powerful and therefore we don't do it. I don't I don't see that, and I don't agree with it either. But thank you. On behalf of Maja House, really like to say thank you to all three of you for being here today. And I do hope that Poonam, Sunil, and Alison, we will be able to welcome you at Maja House at the physical space, and you'll be able to visit us in Amritsar whenever you're in this part of the woods next. Thank you very much, everybody, for being here to the
Yeah.
audience as well.
Yes, thank you very much for anybody who tuned in. I'd just like to make one point. Alison, I think, was a Freudian slip. It is Isabel. Thank you, Isabel, very much for coming in. Yes, and Poonam, it's been great interacting with you. The only point I wanted to make to you, Preeti, and anybody else who's still here, is it's not a cricket book. I must say, it's not a cricket book. It's a human interest story which happens to be set in the world of cricket. So whether you understand cricket or not, there are many times you read a book and you don't understand everything about it, right? It's like I'm reading right now, hypothetically, I'm just telling you, not hypothetically, really, a book I should have read many years ago. It's called The Spy Who Came from the Cold by John le Carre. And I can tell you, and I've read spy thrillers and I've read spy thrillers and I've read spy thrillers, but let me tell you, this book is something else. Now, I don't know everything about England and MI5, MI6, the circus, all that sort of thing. But if you start thinking about just the human aspect of what's taking place, and there's enough way if you can make that out. I think I must once again reiterate, don't get scared because this cricket is as a metaphor or as a language. It just happens to be cricket because in our part of the world, that's the one thing that I think everybody understands in some sense. You know, hum jeete nahi jeete, waise wo sab, all that type of thing. But it is a human interest story. It's a human interest story that I would like people to internalize and think. And if they can do that, I think I will have fulfilled what I wanted to do with this book.
Thank you so very much. And let me share. This book is available on the Amazon and the final innings. So I would request all the participants to order a copy, and so that you can all read the beautiful fiction of cricket, which
I hope so.
will
It's
work
beautiful.
as a bridge between the two nations for the love and for the Valentines. So thank you so very much. It was indeed an honor to have all of you over here on the panel today. And thank you, Preeti, for bringing.
And I apologize to Isabel for getting her name wrong. I'm sorry. In this
I
whole
think
thing of
Isabel and I
about
understand
cricket, you know,
understand
this
what the
apology for
Freudian
not
slip
knowing
was.
cricket. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Not at all, not at all.
But thank you very much, Arvinder. Thank you very much, Preeti. Poonam,
Thank
Isabel, thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
giving me the
And,
time to speak about this.
everybody enjoyed, and especially the twins from Noida. There was a special message for you. The twins from Noida, they really enjoyed the session.
Oh, yeah, I know who they are. Thank you. I saw my cousin from America there as well. And it's very early in America right now, but he's up and it's really sweet of him. And Inam, it's absolutely wonderful to see you again after so many years and chatting. I think, I don't know how many, 5 or 6 years ago when we met in Karachi, that point of time when we had breakfast together. But I hope to see you at some point of time soon.
Sure. Inshallah. Right. Good
Thank
night.
you.
And
Thank you. Good night. And
Good
good
night.
day, Isabel. And a
Good
better
night.
day for England in the test match tomorrow.
Thank you.
wish you a warmer, weather there.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Hassan, for joining in. Thank
Thank
you very
you.
much. Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank
Take
you.
care. Take care, everybody.